Hello, welcome back to Rooted at Badger Rock's virtual workshop series. We're continuing on with our Native American Heritage Month workshops. Today we are up in Wausau, Wisconsin. I'm here with one of my relatives, Dylan Prescott. He's an educator, cultural educator, and does a lot of presentations, presenting all around Wisconsin, different states. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase a little bit of what he does, how he gives back to the community, and some of the work that he does as well. But Dylan, you want to talk just a little bit more about kind of the stuff you do, the work you do?
Hi, my name is Dylan Prescott. I've been living in Wausau here since I was 13 years old. I've been a cultural educator ever since I was 18, so going on 31 years. And I've been a cultural educator ever since probably younger because my mother, I kind of started the job that she had for years before and within Wausau here or within our neighboring towns just to bring awareness of our Native American people and our culture and that we're still here. And we do these things, but we're not always wearing feathers and we don't live in teepees. You know.
Awesome. Well, Dylan, a lot of your presentations are obviously around cultural knowledge, but what are some of the big highlights that you usually try to bring to light when you make these conversations? And depending on age too, right? A lot of
Yeah,
times, yeah.
depending on age, like within like our culture, it depends like the age. It's all the same. With kids, adults. It ain't that. It ain't ignorance. It's just that on I want to say uneducated. And like I go with that. And when I do these my presentations and I talk about our culture, I try to kind of bring everybody into like the same, I want to say, the same room, the same feeling about their own, who they are as a person, who they are within like their family, within their households. And then I work with our culture through that. So that when I do all this, I talk about humanity and I talk about how we're all the same, but there's certain things that we do when we're behind closed doors, and there's certain things that we do within our own culture and who we are as a person ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So yeah, you talk about kind of living the everyday life as well as kind of living the traditional life.
Yeah.
So what are kind of your normal everyday things that you do versus when you put on for your traditional regalia or kind of be one with our culture?
As you can see, my normal everyday things, you can see I have piercings, I have tattoos. I'm just like everyone else. We grew up just like everyone else. I grew up in Milwaukee and here in Wausau. So I grew up in the city. I didn't grow up on a reservation. But at the same time, we grew up, like I said, behind closed doors. When it comes behind closed doors, when we come home to our families, you know, we we spoke language, we ate cultural foods. There were certain things we did when it came to spirituality and those kind of things like that. We would do those things, but at the same time, when we have to walk out the door, I would say we live in two worlds. So
Mm-hmm.
when we have to walk out the door, we have to live with what we call society, with humanity, what everyone's doing out there, but we still have who we are when we come home with, no matter what culture we are, Native American, Black, Mexican, Italian, however, Yugoslavian. I can keep on going on and on and on, but we still have a culture, but still we have to live in society and in this world.
Gotcha.
So
And that's kind of what you were trying to project out to the world is that
yeah.
we're still here as a culture, Native American culture. Can you just tell us a little bit about your tribal affiliation and kind of what that means to you as well?
Um, well, my tribal affiliation, I come from two tribes. I come from the Ho-Chunk Nation, which is comes from my mother, the late Bonnie Prescott, and she was Bear Clan,
Mm-hmm.
and she was full-blooded Ho-Chunk. And then I come from my father's side, which was Forest County Potawatomi, and he was full-blooded Potawatomi, and he was Eagle Clan. So like I come from two different tribes, And like what people think is that just because we're Native American is that we're all the same. We all speak the same language. We all do the same things. We all have the same spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, I had to learn both Potawatomi, our culture there, our history, and Ho-Chunk, our culture, our history, onto even the language,
Mm-hmm.
different languages, different table manners and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like just as being a Native American ever since, like I was young, like I was fascinated, and like when I would go places to our I would go to our like spiritual ways. I'd go to our powwows and this and that, and I was just always fascinated on our Native American culture. So I took it all in, and it was kind of like not a hobby; it was a lifestyle, to the point where even I thought, when I get older, this is something I want to raise my children, to know who they are, instead of just say, "Hey, I'm a Native American." No, they could say hello in their language. They could have a what we call a Indian name. They would have a way, a solid ground to stand on, besides just saying who they are. They could have something in the culture. Being raised, like, culture made me proud in some way to be who I am. So that helped out, being proud as a human being, pride in myself, and that helps out kind of even in life. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? That helps out in your own life. If you have pride in yourself, if you have pride in who you are, because if you don't have pride in yourself, pride in who you are, then you kind of like, you're going to slip into something else, and it comes into all this other things that can, you can veer off into this world. And but if you got pride and a solid standing ground on actually who you are, in your culture. And when I say your culture, I really don't say it just as Native American, as any culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Any culture of who you are. And even to me, culture is even like just your family. Like, culture is if you do something special on Christmas, you do something special on Easter, or you do something special, a special on a day where maybe you had a grandparent or something, and you say, okay, this is what we did every year, and then it moves on to each year and each year, and you do those things to make you feel good. That's
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's what they say American culture. They say all this kind of culture, but culture is like things that you would do to make you feel good. That and that's what I preach a lot. To a lot of our young ones nowadays, because that's how it is. It's sorry to say, but a lot of our young ones, they they, they sometimes they feel they don't have a belonging. They don't know a belonging in any
Mm-hmm.
kind of where in this world now. But then, if they learn culture, no matter who they are, even as culture in their own family, then you have a sense of belonging.
Right.
All those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. Really, really love hearing your perspective and how or why you do what you do. Got a couple of items in front of us. How do you like to use these when you're presenting as well?
I like to use these when we're presenting, because, and even like I was saying, like, when I show up, I don't show up wearing the traditional regalia. I don't show up wearing the feathers. I don't kind of show up, wearing these things like that they would think a Native American is gonna walk into the room looking like a Native American.
Mm-hmm.
And then these things that I have, these things that are here, are things that is history, and who we are. And then there's certain points where then we use these items, and we hold these items that we have here, very like highly respected, and it's, just the things I have, I really take care of, our drum. And then, they always say, "Oh yeah, well, do you have a drum?" And we say, "Yeah." And then they think it's just a drum. But there's a whole story behind how we got these drums, and when we use them, and when we're singing. You see on TV that, like, oh yeah, you see our cartoons, and it's not like that. There's meaning to the beats. There's meaning to the words that are being said, to the songs that is being sung, and even the regalia that we wear, the beads, and these certain things that we have and we use were things that it was life. It was life, but before we were able to wear these t-shirts, we were able to drive a car,
Mm-hmm.
or be able to live in a home like this, and turn up the heat on a thermostat,
Right.
watch a TV. These were natural things that we had in our own lifestyle that we have to remember that we had. And like I said, it coming from then when we have this now, learn to respect the stuff that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So like even like a lot of these things, our feathers, they always, you look on TV, you look on the cartoons, and they always show our feathers like being different colors or being busted or being, looking rugged, or things like that, and like it's just a feather. But no, these aren't just a feather. There's a whole meaning behind these eagle feathers that we use and that we have, and we take pride in them, and we respect them, and there's a lot of power, and there's a lot of things that go along with just these feathers that we have. And so we really take care of them. Like, they're not all different colors, and even when they show colors, that those mean something else.
Mm-hmm.
And even like just the simplicity of even like our baskets. These baskets that we have. These baskets that we have different meanings to them, the colors in them, how we would use them, and even to this point, like nowadays, it's a decor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But me, like over there, if all my baskets are, I actually use my baskets the way you're supposed. It's a
Mm-hmm.
basket. We use them for things.
Yep.
And there's different meanings to these things, like these different bends, these different colors, these different shapes that come from different tribes.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't a basket.
Yep.
And also even like our canoes, how this is just like a little like something I take to schools, to classes, and
Mm-hmm.
like just to show like that everything that we have comes from nature.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a store. So and we to this day we still make all these things the same way. Nowadays they're making our canoes the same way out of birch bark. This little canoe here, you don't see any nails in it, you don't see any glue, you don't see nothing. Everything here is all natural, even if it's just a little something that I show how we would make it. Our baskets, you don't see any nails, you don't see any glue, any
Mm-hmm.
tape like that. All of these things that I have here, besides my beaded medallions here,
Mm-hmm.
come straight from nature.
Yep.
So and then even that, that's when we have to remember who we are, and then we come from this land, and then we practice these things. So I talk about even like me, like in our Ho-Chunk language we say keperesni. I don't know anything, I don't know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we're supposed to be. And they say we learn to the day we take our last breath. So so then we what we do is then we practice all of these things that we have. We practice our ceremonies, we practice our singing, we practice these games, we practice this way of life. Because a lot of it was lost.
Mm-hmm.
So like these things that I have here, like, are things that I hold very dearly, like our drum, like I said. And then even before, like before we had these beads, and they talk about Columbus, but we had people from other countries coming here way before Columbus, way, 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 hundreds of years. I want to even say thousands of years before Columbus, that would come and trade as we got the beads. But before that, we would these things like that we have there. This is all natural. These are made out of porcupine quills.
Mm-hmm.
Before we had beads, it was all made out of porcupine quills. Even to the meaning of, you see, there's a little mirror inside there, and we believe, that we believe in the spirit world. um, and we have stories on when the spirit world was here. I was here right with this world, and everything here that I'm even showing is like, they say the spirits taught us these things. We didn't learn these things. When the
Mm-hmm.
spirit world and this world was one world, they say we were taught all these things, even our cultures, even our spirituality, the things we do in our ceremonies, was told to us straight from the spirits, straight from the Creator. So, this, even like the, our hides, that how we would like use everything of the deer and everything, how our lifestyle, and we would only take what we needed,
Yeah.
things like that. And so this stuff that, lot of the stuff that we have and we use it gives us like a memory. It gives us, it makes us think again to be that way to this day, you know, kind of have some respect, for Mother Earth. We
Hmm.
call her Mother Earth because she gives us light, she gives us warmth, she gives us food, she gives us water, she gives us air.
Yeah.
Just like your mother takes care of you, like the earth takes care of us. That's why we call her Mother Earth. And us as Native American people, we believe we came from the earth. We didn't believe we came from this and that, or we didn't come from anywhere else. Like a lot of our people, we believe that wherever that part of the United States that we call Turtle Island, Canada, Mexico, and all that, we believe that we came from the earth, right from there, to take
Hmm.
care of the earth. So, just, I don't know, maybe I veered off a little bit on
No,
what you
man, no,
said.
you're doing great.
They would have said, I veered off a little bit, but like, this is like when we do these things, we practice these things. It's supposed to be that way. We're supposed to
Hmm.
bring back a thought of like, of a way of life, and of a way of like, how Mother Earth took care of us, because these things, we would only take what we needed.
Hmm.
And even like, hunting or all that, they say even we would have ceremonies for weeks and months before we would have to go, deer hunting or hunt buffalo or anything we would hunt, because these animals are our relatives, and we would have to take a life, and we would pray for them that we're taking their life so we can survive.
Right.
It gets real deep in like who we are. We just ain't about feathers. We just ain't about how you see on TV. They're drumming, they're dancing, and all that. No, it's more of a way of life. And like I said, like we have to live in two worlds.
Yeah.
Sometimes you even got to live in three worlds. You know what I mean? We have to live in two worlds. Or now, like when we're about like, once again, we're behind closed doors. We can speak our language. We can eat our traditional foods. But nowadays, our young kids, no matter what culture you are, once you go out there, they expect everybody to be the same. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And that's what makes a lot of cultures thrive, because that's just how it is now. It's
Hmm.
just like that in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think a lot of people just, like you said, they don't see us in our regalia, so they don't see us as the Native Americans, the Indians, as they expect us to be.
Yeah.
But then you kind of bring that perspective and show them that we are here
Yeah.
and that there's so much more to learn and there's so much more on their end that they can see and learn as well.
And
Hmm.
then just like within culture, like, just learning that, like, you know, learning any of your culture, and it all comes down to humanity. You know what I mean? Any
Hmm.
culture, who it is humanity, and being human on this earth. Loving, caring, sharing. Helping one another. And then truly, like, as the human beings, we're supposed to love one another. That they say we're all related. Even in our Native American people, within our cultures, within our language, when we pray, we all have a saying that talks about our relatives, our brothers, our sisters, and we ain't just talking about us as Native American people. We're talking about the two-legged ones.
Hmm.
We have a story that comes from us, that we didn't know color, we didn't know any of that. We just knew that we were the two-legged ones that were made, just like these deer. They Doesn't matter what color they are, how big their horns are, they're still all deer. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? All these animals, it doesn't matter like how big they are, how small they are, what color they are, they're still all that form of animal. And like, I'm not saying we're animals, but as human beings, we were made as the two-legged ones.
Yep.
And and
Yep.
we have a lot of stories as Native American people where it comes from that. And that's, even people came when they came here to Turtle Island. We didn't know any different. And we didn't know what the people who did come here, they saw different. They saw color. They saw different as in a way of life. They saw different as in a language and this and that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To the point where you could go to like Jamaica, and if it doesn't matter what color you are, what shape you are, what ethnicity you are, if you live there, you're Jamaican. You could go to Europe, the UK, and it doesn't matter what color you are. Same thing, what color you are, what shape you are, where you come from. You live there, you're from the UK. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're European, and it seems like America, we're the only ones still that are left. Like we still like distinguish each other as like a color, as like a shape, as like a culture. We're like the only ones who are still like that. But we're, to me, like, we're all Americans. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
we still have our saying. We're the indigenous ones. They used to say Native Americans, Indians, but we're the indigenous ones from here. So like there's a certain way that we lived. And there's certain things that we did. All of that. It boils down to us being indigenous. But wherever you're from, you're indigenous. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Yep. Man, that's awesome. Love to hear. Love to hear all this. But yeah, did a really good job of explaining kind of what you do and a lot of the highlights you bring up during your presentations. Uh, yeah, I think kind of just some of the closing remarks I want to bring up are, yeah, like what are some of the things, or where do you do these presentations a lot? What are some of the audiences you present to?
Okay, and then yeah, then now it comes back to like how I got into doing this. I'm gonna start with that too. Like I said, I was born in Milwaukee, and when I was there, we I was a little kid, and I'm saying this is like 40 years ago, 40 some years ago. We were walking. I was there. We would wear two braids. We had both our ears pierced. As soon as we were born, they pierced both our ears, and we'd get teased. We called girls, and then they'd even do the ooh to us, and then to the point where we would go home, and we'd be like sad. Like, where are we being teased, like being bullied? Another point. Then that's when my mother, she would go to our school, and um, she'd talk about why we have long hair, why we have both our ears pierced, and actually, like, why we do certain things, Native American people. And then it kind of like made us cool then in the class after they got educated just a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
why we look like that. And then that's why I do this too. I do the same thing. As soon as I hear there's a Native American kid being, you know I don't want to say the word bullied, but I just want to say, as children, that they just don't know. They're just
Mm-hmm.
uneducated, and they're just kids. That's what my mother used to say. So that's what made me do this and go out into all these different communities and talk about these things and who we are, and let them know why we have long hair. Let them know, that we're still here and we're just like them, and there's just, you might look over. I tell them, you might have a Native American kid in here. Do you have Native American kids? A couple kids raise their hand. They look at them. They didn't even know they were Indians. You know what I mean? So, just to break the racial barrier, and at the same time, I go all over to more inner city,
Mm-hmm.
more inner cities, smaller towns, inner city schools, colleges and all that, just to explain these things more, just to help us out as Native American people,
Right.
for pride, because we're less than 1% of the census.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We're less than 1%. That's like throwing 1,000 people together, and only 10 of us are Native American. not even, maybe 5.
Right. Yeah.
You know that, and then even with that, the 5 who are there, only 2 of them know the culture. So a lot of that, and then just bring pride into our native people, our inner city native people who don't think just because they don't have the feathers, just because they don't have the drum, just because they don't have the beadwork, they don't have the long hair, that they don't know the language, to bring pride to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that a lot, sometimes there's a lot of our Native American people, because they don't, they just didn't grow up like that. They feel like, they ain't Indian enough, they ain't Native American enough.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of kids out there, just like us, once again, no matter what culture you are, if they don't, if they don't know that, they think they're not enough of that, but you are. You know what I mean? That's what I bring awareness
Yep.
to, like, a lot of our inner city kids, and there are a lot of our kids that didn't grow up that way, and that's just how it is. But I bring awareness to them, and I bring pride to them. Like I told you earlier, it gives them a strong something to stand on,
Yep.
and then pride, and then that pride in who they are takes you a long way in your life with it. Whether And it just brings pride, whether if you go work somewhere, brings pride to who you are when you work, you know or if it brings pride to anything you do, you build something, it brings that pride. Like pride, it does a lot, in your life. It helps anybody, any person, a lot. So I bring pride to those kids, and or even adults,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like, and, then it bring pride to them, be like, you are Indian enough. You know what I mean? Just because you don't know this, you have feeling, you even, like, it's still in them to have a feeling, to, like, okay, it's like a prayer, like, I'm Native American. You know what I mean? And then whatever culture you are, however you do it, is there ain't no wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's how it feels like in this world now. Like, how it, if no matter who you are, if you're doing it, that's your culture, that's your ethnicity. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
and the Native American people, we feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. I'm not Indian enough, or maybe I shouldn't do that. I didn't grow up like that. But if you do it, you know practice, like I told you, we practice it. That's all we're doing here. As even all of us, we practice our cultures, we practice a way of life. And you know that's that's my awareness. That's why I go out into these places. And then you just, growing up myself, I sat in front of colleges, I sat in front of rooms of professors, I
Mm-hmm.
sat in front of rooms of teachers, I sat in front of rooms of uh, of churches, and told them these simple things that I just know, like that, how I believe and how I live. And they were at awe. You know what I mean? They're at
Mm-hmm.
awe what I'm telling them. Like, they never heard these things before. And there's just something that comes natural to me.
Yep.
And like, I don't take it for granted. You know what I mean? I feel blessed, when I'm able to even do these things, like, for your school or anywhere I go. I feel blessed
Mm-hmm.
that, that I can do this, and all I do is my best. I just do my best, and I'm speaking from the heart. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's a lot of it, is just that, to help. Like I said, I bring humanity, but I use our Native American culture. I bring humanity together, all that kind of thing. So that's my the main reason I do what I do. You know what I mean? For any
Mm-hmm.
any kids, anybody, any human beings. It doesn't matter what color you are when you come through my house, my doors, come in my doors.
Yep.
And I always tell everyone, like, my house is kind of like, if you watch, like, you watch Forrest Gump, when he's like, everyone comes in there wearing, suitcases, hat cases. You got all kinds of different
Right.
people coming in your house,
Mm-hmm.
and there's all this stuff going on. Same way, people come over. You know what I mean? They even just talk humanity. Not even talk about my Native American culture, but I use my culture into humanity, and talk to them, do my best I can.
Right.
I don't I don't I don't judge nobody, you know, and I'm not perfect myself and all these things, but I do my best, you know what I mean? Just and I do a lot of it too for like my children, and like I raised my children real culturally as
Hmm.
much as I could. I told them everything I can tell them. You know what I mean? If if they want to use it, if they want it, it was there. They know it.
Yep.
You know, that's just if they want to. You know what I mean? When you have children, you only got 18 years. You know, to tell them everything you know, to teach them everything you know. Then they got to go out into the real world.
Hmm.
So that I know that for a fact.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's powerful too. Well, yeah, I think that kind of covers a lot of what I was hoping to get. But I just want to say thank you, Dylan,
Yeah.
and thank you for all that you do for the community, for all the people you've touched throughout the years of all your presenting. And oh, you got a buddy over here. But yeah, just want to say Big Witch, Pinagigi, thank
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
and for all that you do, and for all that you continue to do in the future as well.
Hmm.
So with that, I think we're going to wrap up this virtual workshop. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.